Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the Infatuasian podcast. We're back with a real fun one for you today. We're going to be talking about the amazing Asian American coming-of-age movie, DiDi. I guarantee that if you watch this film, it will instantly transport you back to the summer before freshman year of high school. So many feels, so many emotions, so much energy. But I think it's an instant classic definitely for our community. But I think it's going to be a hit. I think it's going to be a really, really important film. So we're going to talk about it today. And you know me, I like to bring in some co-hosts. So we brought in two co-hosts today. It's been a minute since we've recorded with both of them, so let's catch up with our first guest. She is coming in from Manchester, England. It is our favorite Mank. It's Zoe.
Hi everyone. Hi. It's good to be back.
Good to have you back. And if you guys remember, Zoe is a bookshop owner of an online bookstore called Juniper by the Sea Books. So we'll talk more about that. So what you been up to, Zoe?
Watching DiDi. We had a screen in Manchester. Otherwise, I think just reading lots of books, doing different interviews, but written interviews, not interview podcasts per se. But yeah, it's been really fun. Been busy, but really fun.
Nice. And thank you for joining us. It's dinner time over there. So have you had dinner yet?
I have had a very early dinner just to make time for this.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. All right, and our second guest is our Southern California representative. She is coming in from LA. It is our old pal, Katie, fresh off the Ariana Grande tour.
Ariana Grande, no, Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh, wait. I got my divas mixed up. Okay. Right. Fresh off the Olivia Rodrigo tour, we have Katie Wynn. Welcome back, Katie.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be back.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing this episode for months, I feel like.
A very, very long time, yeah.
Actually, we were talking about trying to get Sean on when Nine Nine Paul was nominated for an Academy Award. So we've been stalking Sean for like 6 months.
I know. I feel like it's been a journey, but he's just so busy now. But I'm glad that we're doing this episode regardless.
Yeah. And you guys have something in common. You both got to see the movie for free at different screenings.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's start with Katie. How did you get into that, or what screening was that, and how did you get into that screening?
Okay, so actually, this is like an interesting story. I was going to go to the Ascend LA screening, but that was a paid one, and it was the day before I was going to leave for my trip to New York. So I was like, oh, I don't know if that's like the most responsible thing to do because I still will have to pack and all of that. So luckily, a friend of mine, she works for sort of an AAPI agency. She reached out to me and she was like, hey, I have an RSVP for a meta screening. Do you want to come? And I was like, absolutely. And it was actually, I think maybe a week before the one that I was going to go to. So it just worked out perfectly. And yeah, it was very cool to come in and see the film. There were other like AAPI influencers around LA that were also attending as well.
Nice. And then Zoe, you were part of the you were part of the sponsorship of your screening, yeah?
Yeah, well, I ended up being really privileged to be in the position to co-host the screening. We ended up doing it in Manchester, which is really special because it meant that I had the opportunity to work with Multi Films. They're a film society. I think you've seen on my Instagram, Curtis. That's kind of how we met, really, over another one of those events. But yeah, I did it with Multi Films and also Universal Pictures. So we had a special community screening in Manchester.
Nice.
And I guess the aim was to sort of really build that Asian presence, in Manchester. But it was such a good movie to kind of, share that with everyone. Yeah, so it was really special.
Yeah, cool. I unlike you guys, I had to pay for a ticket, but it was totally worth it. Got to support the indie filmmakers, so that was great.
Yeah.
There was a screening here, but I missed it. I texted Katie. I was like, hey, there's a screening on Tuesday, and should I go? And Katie's like, yeah, you definitely should go. And then by the time I clicked on it, it was totally sold out.
Oh, but, I'm actually hoping to see it again.
I'd love to see it again. Yeah, I'll pay again. Yeah. That's fine.
Twice.
Oh, you already saw it twice.
Yeah, I was in Seattle last weekend and they started putting it out in theaters there. And so my brother and I were home and I was like, we're going to go see this. So we went. And we paid.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's yeah.
Now it's kind of cool to see it with a sibling. I would imagine because I have an older sister who's about 4 years old. So I was a freshman in high school. She was a senior in high school. So that felt pretty familiar to me.
Yeah.
So maybe I should go see it with her and see if it resonates differently with her having a little brother.
Yeah.
I took one of my younger brothers with me actually, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was good.
But I can imagine you being a nice, supportive older sister, though, Zoe.
I like to think so. It's funny we were asked about this, at the event. I like to think so, but I think, do you know what older sisters are sometimes best at doing? I think younger brothers interpret it as nagging.
Yeah.
Like do this, do that, or get out.
Sure. Yeah, that's true.
So
I think Katie, are you a younger sister or older sister?
I am a younger sister.
Okay.
My brother and I were 6 years apart, but we're pretty close. And he lives up in San Francisco.
Okay.
Originally, I wanted to take my whole family. I wanted my parents to come. But now looking back on it, it was actually really nice to like share that experience with my brother. I think my parents would probably appreciate seeing like an AAPI film, but I don't know if they would have gotten some of the jokes from like our adolescence.
Sure, yeah. Well, I actually have a freshman in high school right now. I had so this summer I had an 8th grader going into high school, and I thought about bringing her, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. It might have given her some bad ideas. But yeah, okay, so we're going to talk about the film in a second, but before we get into the film, and also audience out there, we're going to warn you before we spoil the plot or anything, so you can keep listening until we give you a little warning. But I wanted to do a little catch-up because I think this is going to be a pretty real-time episode. I think I'm going to try to drop it next week so we can talk about current things. So let's see, anything new going on with you guys?
I did another podcast recently.
Katie.
I know. But you know what, Curtis? I'm always so grateful because you were the first podcast that like ever invited me to be on. And,
nice.
I love coming back and working with you, but in my defense, this is a very different type of podcast. So I went on a podcast with this company called Internexus, and I met with one of their interns to talk about recruiting. So Zoe, I don't know if you know this, but in my day job, I'm a full-time recruiter for a company. And I've been doing that for over a decade now, but really just like sharing like career advice and tips. And because school is starting, this was like very relevant for university students. So that was the only thing that I did. And then still, in LA doing a lot of content stuff too.
I'm kidding, Kate. You could do as many podcasts as you like. I won't be jealous.
This will always be my favorite.
Oh, man. How about you, Zoe? What's new with you? You got some new stuff going on?
Yeah. Well, I guess I've got a few, I suppose like bookshop pop-ups coming up in September.
Okay.
So September's our East and Southeast Asian Heritage Month in the UK. So lots and lots and lots of stuff going on. I'm doing like 2 pop-ups, one in Bristol and one in London.
Okay.
And I think that'll be really fun. Yeah. The Bristol one is pretty local. And I think, again, it's just building that kind of community vibe outside of London. And then the one in London is an alternative EC culture festival. They're gonna be raving until 3 a.m. But I'm just gonna be doing the day part. I'm gonna have the little bookshop and the day market. But it just looks really cool. So I'm hoping to stay on after the pop-up closes, just to experience the rest of their events.
Now, do you bring 2 giant suitcases full of books? How do you get all your books down there?
Yeah, what I've done before is I've driven down with boxes in the back of my car, and then get some friends to give me a hand with helping set up. Really,
how far is London from Manchester?
It's quite a few. I mean, do you know what? I think the distances in the US are very different, relatively speaking. To me, it's quite a long trip. It's probably 4 hours or so driving. 4 and a bit hours.
Okay. Yeah. So not as far as LA is from me, but that's a good half day, like you're out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to give a shout out to a couple listeners. I don't know their names, but we've had a little bump of listeners in Colorado. So Maybe it might be my cousin. My cousin does live there, but I don't know. So anyway, so we had a bunch of listeners coming in from Colorado. So thank you, Colorado. And I actually shamefully didn't even know where this next place was. I got a couple, like, I don't know, 10 listens from Cape Verde.
Ooh.
Do you guys know Cape Verde?
No.
It's a little island.
I don't know anyone there.
I think it's a little island off the coast of Africa, I think. And so someone in Cape Verde, whoever you are, shoot me an email. Let me know who you are. I'll read your email on the air because that's cool. A country I didn't know existed. And so Cape Verde, welcome to the podcast. I hope you're listening. All right, let's see. Anything else we want to shout out? I told Zoe this. I didn't tell you this, Katie. Guess who I interviewed on Thursday?
Oh my gosh, who?
Okay, so I think you're old enough.
Wait, can you give me a hint?
Okay, so think Asian newscaster from
Connie
the
Chung?
70s. Yes!
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
She's iconic.
She's a goat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
she
she's
is
legend.
the goat.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so she
God.
wrote a book called, it's her memoir, so it's about her life. And her publisher wrote to me. I don't know how she found me. She must have just Googled Asian podcasters. But her publisher emailed me and was like, hey, would you like to have Connie on your podcast? And I replied in like
Hell
15
yes.
seconds. Yeah, I was like, yes, please. And so we did a little interview and it was super fun.
Oh my God.
It's like talking to an auntie, like literally like the vibe. Like she's an older Asian woman, very nice and well-spoken. Yeah, it was so fun.
Wow. Curtis, that's amazing. Do you know? Well, of course I know Connie Chung just because of like news and journalism, but
Right.
there was an article published last year by another journalist that I love, Connie Wang, and she wrote about the Connie effect.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my best friend's sisters is named Connie after Connie Chung.
Yes.
So, but there was like
Yeah.
a whole period of people that were named after her, and that's incredible.
Yeah, no, there's all people from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, really, or probably 2000s too, that just, yeah, so that's the last chapter of her book is The Connie Effect, which is really cool.
Wow, I can't wait to listen to that episode.
Yeah, so go get her book. It's not, I'm not going to release it until September 20th or so because her book comes out on the 19th. So we're going to hold that, but I might tease a couple reels before then.
Yeah, you should. Are you also going to tease some reels of this too?
No, I think this one's just going to come out. This is just going to drop.
Oh,
But we could, yeah.
or you
I
should
could
make
probably,
some videos, I feel like, because they've been resharing a lot.
Yeah. That's the easiest thing is just to reshare something that they make. But yeah, okay. So if you're listening to us now, maybe you are here because of one of our reels that we posted. All right. Well, let's get into our discussion on DiDi. Let's see. Where should we start? Well, first of all, I wanted to say, do you guys remember, how vividly do you remember your 8th grade summer? Well, actually, in England, is it 8th grade? It's Form 6.
See, I had to look this up, and I look it up every time because we don't split middle school and high school usually.
Okay.
We have like secondary school, so that's what 11 to 16. But I
Yeah.
stayed on in my school, so I just 11 to 18 in the same school.
Okay.
So
it'd be like when
I think
you're
it's all a blur.
yeah, for us it's like when you're 13 or 14 and you're finishing up middle school and then you're going to high school when you're 15. So, Katie, how well do you remember that era?
So mine was kind of interesting. Our middle school was like 7, 8, and 9th grade. And then I didn't really get to high school until 10th grade. And so for the purpose of this question, how well did I remember it? Like, when I was in 9th grade, I was like ASB president. So, and also it was just smaller. Like I happened to know everyone in my grade. And then once we got to high school, we were merging with another middle school. And I just felt like that other junior high, everyone was like 10 times cooler than all of us, like very popular, very experienced. And I just never really kind of felt like I fit in. Like I was like coming from one world where I knew everyone, was very comfortable with myself. And then I went to this high school and I was like a small fish in a bigger pond. And I just felt like everyone was so much farther than me in life in a way, even though we were at the same place.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I felt a lot of the similar feelings of Chris, like just feeling so out of place, very awkward. And then you add in the digital component. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Zoe?
I relate to that. I think even though it was the same school that I was in, for all, what, 7 years. But it's just going through your teenage years, the really
Sure.
difficult of kind of you're talking to friends, you're potentially going out, going to the cinema together, going out for food, and you're kind of like you don't know where each other's boundaries are because your family boundaries are very different to, the
Yeah.
culture around family life is so different
Yeah.
to your friends. That yeah, a lot of it really resonated. Even though I wasn't starting school sort of at that age, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it is. I do remember it pretty clearly that it's such a weird age too because there are some kids that are still kids, because
Mm,
they're still playing with toys and reading, doing Pokemon and stuff like that. And then there are other kids same age, but they're having sex, they're drinking, they're going out late at night. And you're all the same school together, so you have like some kids that are literally still children. And then you have other kids that are doing other like very, very adult things,
mm,
dating
yeah,
boys in high school with cars, and you're
yeah.
like, "Wait, you're 13. What are you doing?" And yeah, so it's really a weird time. It's really a weird time in how people mature, and their home life are so different. So I remember that
Mm,
pretty clearly. So this film, oh man, it I mean, it was pretty intense. I don't know if anyone had that intense of a summer, but I think we were all trying to find ourselves and figure out who we were going to
mm,
be. And like Katie alluded to, this was kind of the dawn, like 2008 was kind of the dawn of social media in a lot of ways. And so I'm much older than you guys. Do you guys remember digital media being a thing when you're in high school or pre-high school, or it just was
yeah.
still getting started?
I was in high school. I remember having dial-up internet in my early high
Yeah,
school
yeah.
years and then transitioning to broadband.
hmm
Um, and I remember getting Facebook around that time, you know, um,
Yeah.
and MSN. I don't know if you guys used
Yeah.
it in America, right?
Yeah.
Like,
For
but I
Messenger.
remember
Yeah.
the like the one before that I never used was ICQ. I didn't know that was like an
Yeah.
Asian thing,
Yeah. We had that
right? I
too.
remember that, but I never really used it because we didn't have, broadband back then.
Yeah.
But very much remember MSN and then getting Facebook during my
Uh-huh.
high school years. So
Uh-huh. How about you, Katie? You remember that
definitely.
era?
Yeah, my friends and I and peer group, we were all up in all the like platforms. So
Mm.
before Facebook and MySpace, we were also on like Zanga, LiveJournal, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how we all learned
I
how to
remember
do
Live Channel.
HTML, but I think my dad's a web designer, so I picked it up pretty quickly.
Uh-huh.
And it's just so crazy how rapid all of the platforms were moving around that time. And then to
Yes.
figure out your voice on each platform and who you wanted to be and what was defining you from
Mm,
like the music to like your friends, and to just like having that communication style and trying to be cool and learning how to be cool on the internet, but then like how does that
Yeah.
translate into real life? And I think that's something that, we've seen a transformation of now into like 2024. Sometimes like we meet influencers who are very different in their online persona, but
yeah.
different in person too. But like all that started
Mm-hmm.
from like this era, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely
I
agree.
for one am glad that I graduated high school before social media because yeah, I think I'm glad there's no record of me when I was just, hanging out and doing stupid stuff. It's probably a good thing for some of us. All right, so let's see. So let's talk in general real quick. I'll give the IMDb description of DiDi, and then we'll warn you guys to get away when we start to talk about the plot. But the general description is in 2008, during the last month of summer before high school begins, an impressionable 13-year-old Taiwanese American boy learns what his family can't teach him: how to skate, how to flirt, and how to love your mom. All right, so it's kind of a general. Does not really capture the essence of the film. But do you guys want to do a better description? Do you have a synopsis that won't spoil anything?
I think it's a trip down memory lane, you
Yeah,
know,
for
like
sure.
one for the MySpace generation is what they say, don't they?
Uh huh.
Um,
Uh huh.
yeah, coming of age movie,
Coming
really,
of
for
age for
Asian American
sure.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it stars the amazing. I think they did such a good job because have you seen Sean and Isaac on stage together?
Yeah.
No.
They're like the same person. Like they're separated by a dozen years or so, but more than that. But yeah, Isaac Wang and Chris. Isaac Wang plays Chris Wang, who is probably modeled very closely after Sean Wang. So it looks like it could be like the way they talk and their mannerisms. They did such a good job finding this actor, Isaac. So the rest of this cast, I didn't know who they were, but they were fantastic. Like from these kids, a lot of kids, they're not great actors, but this group was really good.
Yeah, and I think what was special about this too is that they aren't actors. They're just kids.
Wow.
A lot of them, well, except for Isaac and Shirley and Joan,
Right.
the majority of them were casted at like skate parks or camps
Oh,
or just around like malls, I think. And I think Sean said that he really wanted to capture the essence of finding someone who wasn't like well trained in this and
mm,
could just like act like
Mm,
a kid. And I think that's what we see on screen, actually.
mm,
Like people talking at that age the way that they normally would, just being a normal teenager going into high school. And I think now he's said in some interviews that some of them actually want to go into acting
oh,
now having
wow.
done this. I think Maddie
mhm.
is one of those examples because she was
Yeah.
great in the film.
She was really good.
And then the last part that I thought was really interesting was because some of these kids were on summer break. This was shot last summer, I believe, in Fremont. He wanted to create like a summer camp atmosphere for them so that regardless of whether or not the movie did well, they actually had a great summer and they like met people and had fun. So there were,
Huh.
I think, like sort of like a carnival type feel to it on set. Sometimes they did like a talent show. And I just
Oh,
thought that was really great because at the end of the day, they are not like formally trained actors and they are still
yeah.
kids.
Yeah,
So
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool story.
that sounds
That's
really
a cool
great.
story. And then the only other actor I knew from before is Joan Chen, of course.
Yeah.
The amazing Joan Chen, who plays his mom. Any memories of Joan Chen from back in the day? You guys ever see Last
Mm,
Emperor?
I
no.
Oh,
never
so
saw
good.
her in anything else, but I'd heard of her because I knew she was in Twin Peaks, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
And so her name had come up several times for me, but this was the first thing that I'd ever watched her in. And I thought she was just the heart and soul of the film, really. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, she's a scene stealer for sure. I have a lightweight Joan Chen story. So when I was in college, I was interning at the Asian American Theater Company in San Francisco, and they had an open call for extras for the movie Joy Luck Club.
Oh yeah.
Non-speaking role. So I just would have been the Asian dude in the back, but I didn't get it. But they called me back and they said, "Hey, would you like to be an extra in a Joan Chen movie called Golden Gate with Matt Dillon?" Probably must have been 1993 or so, something around there. And I said I would, but then they gave me the dates, and I had final exams
Oh no.
that week,
Oh.
so I couldn't do it. So I came this close to being in a movie with Joan
Hanging out.
Chen, but alas, no, I've never met her. I think she's local. I think she lives near me. So,
Oh.
Joan, if you're listening, come on the podcast. I DM'd her. She didn't read it though. So, oh well. We tried. To get Sean. Anyway, so the movie is written, directed, and produced by Sean Wang. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Short Documentary with Nine Nine White Paul. So
Mm.
he's definitely a name that is getting so much buzz. And Katie and I tried to get him on. We DM'd the guy. We emailed his agent. We emailed his producer. What did we do? We were going after this guy, but we couldn't get him on. We were trying so hard to get him on the podcast, but we couldn't get him. So, oh well. DiDi was a recipient of the Dolby Institute Fellowship Award, which is a grant from Dolby. So DiDi was also the winner of the U.S. Dramatic Audience Award at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival in January. So this film has been getting buzz since as soon as it showed. That was its world premiere, I think, at Sundance. So yeah, so this movie. Okay, without spoiling anything, what? So he said coming of age. What else can we say about this film?
I think it's a nod to the skateboarding era around this
Mm-hmm.
time. And
Yeah.
someone who was like a former scene kid growing up in Seattle, very involved with the music scene and just the
Mm-hmm.
local bands. I felt that presence with the music
Yeah.
scene, not only just with the Paramore mentions, but all the other bands listed on like MySpace pages and the music that
Yeah.
was on the soundtrack. So yeah, I would say those two pieces are also a large part of the film as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. He's also said it's a love letter to Fremont. If you guys don't know Fremont, Bay Area city, technically part of Silicon Valley, but I kind of think of it more as East Bay. About 30 miles. So Zoe, if you get a map out, it's about 30 miles east and south of San
Yeah.
Francisco. So, and only about 20 miles from San Jose. So, a lot of people in Fremont work in Silicon Valley or they work in San Francisco. Tesla builds their cars there, so it's kind of a tech
Okay.
hub of its own, but more on the manufacturing side. They've done auto making for years. Like GM had a plant there. I think Ford had a plant, Toyota had a plant there. So a lot of things going on there. There's a comedian who said he grew up on the border of India and China, and he said Fremont, California, which is true. If you go there, it's like 60 something percent Asian over there,
Wow.
and a lot of South Asians and a lot of Chinese, especially Taiwanese. A lot of Taiwanese
Wow.
living in Fremont. So I think he depicted that really well in the film. A lot of the kids are Asian or South Asian kids. So it's interesting. Like I lived with a guy from Fremont, and he was Taiwanese, but he was an immigrant. And then I also knew people from Fremont who were American born. So you have that element too. You have, I think this is a disparaging term, of course, but you have ABCs and FOBs, kind of right next to each other, and so there's that dynamic too. So there's nuances to the Asian American scene in
Yeah.
Fremont as well. So definitely, if you're from Fremont, you got to watch this film. He filmed at a lot of his old
Yeah.
hangouts, even down to the stores, and I think even his like doctor's office. They filmed it there and stuff like that.
Curtis, have you been to those places that
No,
are
I haven't spent a lot of time in Fremont. Did you recognize some locations?
so the only time I've ever been to Fremont was for the Fang Sha, the
Oh,
the
uh
boba
huh.
shop. I'm sure they have many locations now, but back then that was like I think the one of the few ones. And then
Yeah.
I've been to Golfland, but I thought that Golfland was in Sunnyvale.
Mm.
So I didn't know that it was in Fremont. I don't know if there's multiple locations or if they just filmed in the one in Sunnyvale because I used to live right next to that one.
Yeah. 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 It's a suburb. Like they have it. It'll feel like a suburb when you're driving around there. I don't know if there's a downtown Fremont, but it just feels like you're just driving block after block with kind of the same looking houses and same looking stores.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a cool little homage to Fremont, California. So Zoe, if you ever come out to the Bay Area, we'll go to Fremont. I'll take you to some
Yeah.
milk tea in Fremont.
Well, I felt like DiDi's put it on the map for me now,
Yeah,
of the random places I'll know about in America.
yeah,
Fremont will be one of them.
yeah. It is kind of a random place that you wouldn't think of visiting, but now that the movie's there, you might want to.
Now that I've seen, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think we are at the end of the part where we can talk freely without spoiling anything. So I'm gonna I looked up on Spotify and Sean actually posted a playlist
Ah,
from the movie. So it's written by this is the playlist on Spotify from Sean Wong. So you guys can look it up. Which song should we play? Like you mentioned Paramore.
Oh, I
So,
love Taking Back Sunday, but also Atmosphere is good too. Jurassic 5, Quality
uh-huh.
Control.
But yeah, here's the
Oh,
That's
this
What
is
You
a
Get,
throwback. Yeah.
Paramore.
Daphne Loves Derby. That's a nod to Seattle music.
Jimmy Eat World. I don't know. Okay,
Hits, bangers all over.
yeah. No, he this is I mean this is kind of the theme here, the kids one.
Yeah.
But
hear
what do
that
you
one a
guys think?
lot. Pick a different one.
Okay, let's pick a different one. Should we do Paramore?
I
That was
think,
kind of
yeah,
a
go for
big.
the Paramore. I think because that got mentioned in the film.
Yeah, that was his in with
You're
the
gonna
girl
have to
with
do a Paramore one.
that was his in with Maddie. All
Yeah.
right, so we're gonna play a little bit of Paramore's "That's What You Get" from the album Riot. When the song is over, you better get away from your device, or you're gonna get spoiled.
Well, I was wrong. That's what you get when you let your heart win. Whoa, that's what you get when you let your heart win. Whoa.
All right, so let's see. What do you want to talk about first with this film? What really resonated the most with you in this film?
Do you want to start?
How about Katie? Pick a topic we'll talk about.
Me? There's so many places to start.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, Curtis, you start.
Okay. All right. First and foremost, it's a coming of age movie, right? I mean, first and foremost, I think I was cringing a little bit, not because the movie was wrong in any way, but because the movie was so right in so many ways. Just the getting in the mind of a 13-year-old trying to figure out friends, trying to figure out girls, trying to figure out self and identity. It was all I wouldn't say looking in the mirror. I wasn't as extreme as this character Chris was. But man, the things that he's thinking, the things that he's going through, I think most of us, especially boys, especially Asian American boys in San Francisco, I mean, you just think about this stuff. So yeah, I think this movie is really about figuring out who he is. I wanted to sit him down and tell him don't talk to your mom like that. Don't listen to your sister like that.
It's hard because at this age, we know better now, right? But
I
it's like at
know.
that time,
Yeah.
you don't know what's to come. And actually, now I can kind of answer your question, Curtis, about like, what were some of the things that I felt in watching that film. I think for me, it really forced me to confront some of my own shame of how I behaved at that age. And I had to sit in that discomfort in that theater. And I really didn't like that feeling, actually. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was kind of emotional at the end of the film. But I'm allowed to like reference scenes now, right?
Yeah, we're in the spoiler section.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that came to mind was like that scene where he's like eating at McDonald's with his family, which I feel like I talk about this all the time. Like, I feel like Asian families love McDonald's, especially the Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Yeah.
Um, but like, he's having a really nice moment with his mom where he's being very playful and like showing his food and stuff. And then it just like dramatically cuts to the scene of him like looking at his mother cutting up her burger. And he says, "So Asian" underneath his breath. And I was like, oh, that like
Yeah.
killed me because she will love him no matter what. And she'll like take that, even though it's probably very hurtful. And I know I was probably a brat as a kid. And I'm sure I did that so many times
Yeah.
to my parents. And that was really upsetting for me to kind of watch through another lens and another perspective. And then, of course, when he's with the cooler high school kids and saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm half Asian."
Right.
And I know this was very common for women my age, but back then we used to call ourselves, and I hate saying this out loud, but I feel like we have to say it and just address it. But like we would call ourselves like Twinkies or bananas, like yellow on the outside, white on the inside, to just try and separate and be like, oh, we're not like other Asians. And that's so embarrassing for me to think about now, and very hurtful that I was trying to really put aside my own identity instead of like where I am now in life, where I'm on your podcast, talking about things like this. And I don't know if I knew back then what would have come, but I hate that I like did that when I was much younger.
Yeah, the self-hate, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that came up in you know the scene where the all the kids are hanging out. They've just barged into his house, into his bedroom, and they're trying to look at the skate videos. And then his mum walks in, and she's really lovely, and
Mm-hmm.
he's totally embarrassed. He's trying to shut her out,
Yeah.
trying to. He literally slams the door in her face.
Yeah.
And these older kids are like, "Hey, don't talk to your mum like that."
Yeah.
And I found that so interesting because I felt that journey of you're learning how to sort of hold these different parts of your life together, right? You know, he's got one side of him that's trying to be cool, trying to pretend he's older than he actually is with
Mm-hmm.
these skaters. And also actually how his friends treat them was probably same if he was hanging out with people his age. But because they're a bit older, they can call him out in it. But it doesn't feel entirely straight either because they end up rejecting him, and I think he's so vying for their kind of approval in a way that
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's hard, I think, watching that. But I really related to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, like my parents are American born, and so I remember feeling a little pride that my parents didn't have a Chinese accent, or that they could navigate certain situations like open house, or anything that we needed parental involvement. I was kind of glad in my immature brain that they weren't immigrants, but yeah, I think that sense of self-hate, even for American-born Asian kids, right? That sense of self-hate and cultural identity where you just want to blend in, you don't want to be different, you just want to be the
Yeah.
same as everyone. I felt that really strongly in this film, and it was really powerful. Yeah. All right. So, what do you guys think of the romance? There was a brief but fun. It was fun for a minute, and then it goes horribly wrong. His little thing with Maddie, who was another great casting of her. I thought she was great, where she was confident but also young. You could tell that she was young. What do you guys think of that? Do you guys remember the first kind of moment where you started liking boys or girls? Like what was that like for you guys?
I find it so cute and adorable and awkward watching the film because when I can't believe I was shocked when he blocked her. Because he
Yeah,
blocks her, doesn't he? After he gets embarrassed at
yeah.
the Are You Nervous game, he goes and blocks her, and I'm there thinking, what are you doing?
And she
Just
felt
go
bad.
talk to
Yeah,
her, right?
yeah.
And it's that, but and I was thinking about but when you're young, do you think, when you're mortified, you just want to run away? You just want to shut it
Mm-hmm.
all down. You don't want to engage
Mm-hmm.
with it. And it shows, I guess, hopefully we're more mature than that now, where you think, oh, you just have a conversation.
Right.
You don't need to run away and it'll be fine. But yeah, so that was really funny for me to
So
watch.
realistic too. I think the little
Yeah.
mini stalking scene, like we were talking about Paramore and how he goes on her MySpace and finds out what movie she likes, and that is classic early
A Walk
social
to
media
Remember.
days. Yeah, walk to remember, and just trying to find out, data digging, right, or trying to find out as much as he can about her so he can impress her with his ringtones, his t-shirts.
It worked for him though
It totally worked.
in the
Yeah,
film. Yeah.
yeah.
That was like our version of just like kind of Google researching a little bit, is like finding these
Yeah.
little nuggets. What I love about that brief romance, though, was that at the beginning of the film, he thinks of her so highly, right? Like she's someone that's sort of unobtainable. She's older, she's cooler. And then when they actually have that conversation on the playground together, he finds that she's just like a very like normal, down to earth, like just like him. Like it's almost like there isn't really an age gap. I don't know how much there is, probably like 1 year. But I think
Mhm.
like back then when you're younger, it feels like, oh, one person that's a
Yeah.
grade above you feels like a big distance.
Yeah,
And in
for
that
sure.
moment, like they're just being playful with each other. And yeah, he's like lying through his teeth about, what he knows
The film.
about the films and stuff. And she just like calls him out on it. But it's not like she's not upset, and it feels like they
Yes.
have like some kind of genuine connection and that she's actually interested in him. So I was kind of bummed that he did block her. I don't know if at that age I would have done the same thing. I think in my head, because I'm like, well, we do go to the same school. I'm going to run into them eventually. I probably should find a way to like make peace with this. But I guess at that age, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I related to that in the sense of just, you're so singularly focused, but then if it goes wrong, you just want to run away and hide. I can understand that. But at the same time, yeah, I think when as adults we're sitting in that theater, we're like, it's fine, just talk to her. Like we would just coach them through it. But yeah, when you're that age, your brain just doesn't function that way. So yeah. What do you think about the family scenes? Those were hard. The family scenes are really hard for me, with the yelling at the table and then yelling at their mom. So many things about the family was difficult, I think, to hear.
Yeah, I think I found it really, again, really resonant, but it was that sort of showing it with tenderness and compassion, the scenes where it's not pleasant to watch, because there's a lot of blame.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are blaming the mum. The mum, I think, yeah, she just was so wonderful, really, throughout the whole movie. But I think she ended up having some really difficult scenes with the grandma.
Mm-hmm.
I think the grandma was like I think they fall out, over they're trying to wash
Her
the
in-law,
dishes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think the grandma blames, Joan Chen's character of like, oh, the kids are like this because you brought them up that way.
Right.
My son's not around, and I think blame is never pretty, and that kind of family dynamic feels really real though. That, I think no matter how seemingly perfect anyone's family is, I think there's always a lot of that behind doors, and filming that I don't know, it's done in a really tender way for me to watch. So I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife grew up with her grandma, which is my mother-in-law's mother-in-law. so her mama, my wife's mama. And so there was that tension between like, why aren't you raising your kids this way, or why don't you cook the food this way for my son and his family, and there's that resentment of like, well, I have to take care of you too, like what all this stuff of living with your in-law, like that felt super real and hurtful. And then at the same time, the kids are just acting up and doing their own thing, and there was so much with those family scenes. I think next time I watch it, I will definitely gonna zoom in on those family moments, because I think that was one of the more important things out of this film for me. So,
I loved seeing these types of scenes on film. They were very hard and uncomfortable to watch at times. I also, as I grew up, like my grandparents lived with me until I was 7. And it was like 6 of us in our house. And sometimes it was a little bit chaotic, but even as a young kid, I maybe didn't pick up on some of those things, but you do start to notice them now, and you can look back on it, and it felt a little bit too real for me in some ways. And then also, interestingly enough, I know these are 2 very different films, but after watching some of those scenes, I also thought of Crazy Rich Asians, because there is that dynamic between Michelle Yeoh's character and I think her mother too, where she's being blamed for the way that she's raising her son, Henry Golding. And it's just, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that family trauma that continues to repeat itself. And how do we break that? But, it crosses in different films. And I think to see those types of patterns, I don't know if that was the intent there, but I think it's meant to be like, oh, we all kind of go through that, especially if you're having multiple people under in your household. And, when it's still family related, like you will have some of those interactions in a way.
Yeah. No,
I think
for
it's
sure.
the sort of like criticism, right? Features a lot in family dynamics. And I think it is tricky when you have sort of dependency and you're relying on each other, or, relying on one person. There's a lot of pain, I think, in those scenes that I think a lot of people can sort of have felt before.
Yeah.
So
No. I think people will feel it, especially if you have a sibling, and you have that sibling dynamic. If you have a grandma that lived with you, if you have an immigrant mom, like there's so many ways to relate to this film. I would say Well, I don't know. It's equal parts friends, but I think it's equal parts family. This movie is about both of those things pretty equally. What do you think of his friends, though? Circling back to his friends, quote unquote friends. That was rough. It was rough to see.
Do you know, I knew the film was really good before going in to see it, but I was still shocked just how much I enjoyed it. I think because I knew him, he was a 13-year-old boy, skater, and I thought I was a bit skeptical as to how much I would relate to that.
American
When I was
too,
at
yeah.
school about that age, right? I was very much, I lived in the library, in the school library. Every break time, I would just, I volunteered as a student librarian, I really did, was just a huge bookworm. But I was having a chat with a few of the people who watched it in the Manchester screening, and we were saying how, for particularly like girls back then, I think we masked a lot of that loneliness by reading. It was so easy for us to say like, oh, I didn't try too hard to get into different friendship groups and necessarily like overtly feel that sense of rejection. But I think it's because a lot of us, we could, hide it in books. It was very enjoyable, but it made it a lot easier for us to say, oh, I'm just going to read, or I like to do this. And you sort of almost step back away from the intensity of that. But it was still there. And I think watching that film uncovered that for me in a way that made me think, yeah, that I did relate of you're trying to not be a failure in these friendship groups. You're trying to fit in whilst also figuring out who you are and not kind of betraying some sort of inner personality that you haven't even figured out yet.
Yeah, yeah. I think nowadays kids just hide behind their phones. You're never alone. If you have your phone, you're never alone, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they feel, and they just kind of sit at their desk, and they're not a loser because they're on their phone. They're doing something, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
On the friendship thing, it kind of reminded me of what we were talking about at the beginning when we started this, which is like everyone is growing at like a different level and a different pace. And I think that's really hard to navigate when you're that age. And I felt like I went through that too. Like, I think for a lot of high school, I was kind of an outsider because some of my friends that I grew up with from elementary to middle school, we were all kind of going in different directions. And then I sort of started developing an interest in like the music scene. So then I was like moving in that direction of like, oh, these are people that have like the commonalities with me. And I don't relate back to the people that I grew up with anymore. So then it's like you sort of start to figure out in high school, are you friends with some people out of convenience or because they've just like been in your life for so long that you keep them around? And then, or because like your friends are dating someone in another group, so now you have to be friends with them. And I totally had that in high school. Like a lot of my girlfriends started dating guys from this other group. And I was like, but do I really even know anything about these people? Or do they know anything about me? Or are we just the common denominator here is because who's dating who? Versus like these are people that we actually like to do the same things together. And then that's when you realize in high school too, it's okay to have multiple friend groups. You don't have to be siloed to just one.
Yeah. Man, and then maybe the last thing about the themes of the film is talking about race. We mentioned it a little bit, but I don't know if there's anything more to say about it. But yeah, I loved it. I thought that this was probably the most genuine expression of someone figuring out their racial identity right before you on the screen. I thought in a movie, at least, maybe in television there's been some, but yeah, I think we've been there, right? Where you don't want to be Chinese, or you want to at least be half Chinese, or you don't want to have the stinky lunchbox, or like that feeling of not wanting to be who you are and wanting to be something you're not. Like that feeling was so strong, and yeah, even in a community that is heavily Asian American, he still had those feelings, and I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah, I think because my mum has always been very Asian, she's been here in the UK for over 30 years, and has very sort of stayed very strong in terms of like, I don't ever so refuse to assimilate. She's got, lots of friends she's made in the UK here, and she's embraced a lot of UK culture, but she's also very resolutely Chinese and is not in any way, she's very defiant about it, I suppose. And it's hard, I think, balancing that when your cultural values and like your norms of reference are so different from school, or when you hang out with your friends. And I think it is learning to bring those two together in a way that you don't feel embarrassed because the rest of your friendship group or your peers don't understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think some of us are still potentially doing it. I mean, I guess with the bookshop, I did, embrace this because I think a lot of us actually are hitting that stage where we really want to be proactively engaging with this and thinking about how to kind of continue to handle those differences.
Yeah. There was that one scene where the older high school skater boys come over to the house and they walk in with their shoes. And I remember I went over to this one guy's house with a bunch of other people, and some of them were Asian, some of them weren't. And he asked us to take off our shoes, and he kind of embarrassingly said, "Oh, it's a Korean thing,
Yeah.
But we were all happy to do it. But I remember his kind of embarrassment asking us to do that, and I felt that when that scene happened in DiDi where they walked in and he didn't even say anything, whereas of course it was expected that you would take your shoes off, but he didn't want to say anything because that would be embarrassing.
It's so easy to like blame and to default to that side when you're confronted with just trying to like fit in. And I wonder now, like that was a very obvious scene that you're bringing up, but I'm like, how many more of those did as a child growing up where I was like, oh, my parents want this, or that's just like how my parents feels or something like that. It's so easy to just like push it off on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's so sad to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still to say like figuring out like what this sort of means to me. I'm still kind of figuring out because my whole childhood, I felt like within my family unit, very Asian, like always having Asian food at home, always spending weekends in Chinatown and things like that. But then like outside of that home, I was like very much being like I grew up in like a white suburban neighborhood, like there wasn't a lot of like minorities at my school, and then that translated through college. So interestingly enough, like it wasn't until I moved to the Bay Area for work that I had like ramen at a restaurant for the first time or Korean barbecue or hot pot. And that was because in my company there were a lot of other Asian Americans. And then I felt othered in that situation because they were like, why are you in your early 20s and you're just doing this for the first time? And I was like, I remember having like where do I belong? Like what am like, what have I been doing wrong this entire time? So I feel like the conclusion that I'm trying to make here is like, I think we're always trying to figure out like as we continue on, and for some people it just happens a lot later, and that's okay. But it's like really coming to terms of like how can you like honor like this even at this period of your life, and also like give yourself some grace too. And like looking back on Chris, seeing like my younger self, I'm like, oh, I hope that everyone feels that way watching this film. That you can forgive yourself a little bit for some of the things that you did that made you such a brat.
Yeah. Give yourself a little grace.
I really love that. I do think we're all on different, I don't want to say, I suppose we are on different journeys of, coming to different acceptances of different levels of comfort, and how proud we are or, neutral it may be, or still wanting to not talk about, where we come from and our family and our family habits, and kind of cultural beliefs, that extend throughout our life. But I like to see it as an adventure of an abundance, like we're so abundant with having all these different cultures that are so interweaved in ours and make us who we are, that I think trying to embrace that sort of, I suppose, difficulty with joy is really fun to go about it.
Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite scene from the movie? Or cringiest scene?
Do you know what? Cringy scene. I was my jaw dropped, I think. You know the hand lotion that got contaminated?
Oh,
That was too much for me. I
that
thought,
was a
what the
lot.
hell?
I was shocked
Yeah.
by that.
I was not expecting that, yeah.
That was wrong. Yeah, that was super
That
wrong.
was way too much for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was probably like my really squeamish scene.
Not
What?
a cringy scene or a favorite scene, but just one that I think about sometimes is like near the end when he sees Maddie again at
Hmm.
school, and he tries to come over to her, and he's, it's a little bit too little, too late, and it's fine. But I think in our happy world where like, oh, she's gonna forgive him and it's gonna go back to normal, and she just doesn't. She's like, you punched my friend, and
Yeah.
we were like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually that's a very valid response.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I liked, I mean, you mentioned the cringy scene with the sister, but I liked the arc, I liked the resolution
Yes.
where she leaves and well, I think there's a turning point where he says, "Why do you hate me so much?" or "Why are you so mean to me?" Something like that. And it does something to her. She
He shouts
realizes,
at her. Yeah.
she realizes something, and
She starts looking out for him, I think, after that.
I like that.
Or
Yeah,
more
where
actively so, yeah.
she drives him places, and she's like, "I can hang around, if you need a ride home, just let me
Yeah.
know." And
Nice.
those scenes were good. And my sister's a good big sister. She was never mean to me, so but those scenes were cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe the cringiest scene was when the older boys come over to his house to watch the videos, and they're like, "Oh, you got the scene where we're running away, right?" He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I totally got it." And then it's just nonsense.
It's just the ground.
And then they're like, "Bruh, what are you? You're not that
Yeah.
good." That was rough. Because he talked it up so good. But so this film, I don't know where I would put it, but in terms of Asian American films with heavily Asian American cast, I would say this is one of the best, most realistic, non-documentary, but kind of a documentary, like slice of life, suburb as an Asian kind of film. I don't know if I've seen anything done this well, this realistic, like this, almost like a perfect film of capturing that segment of Asian America. I thought it was fantastic.
I actually think it's one of my favorite films now. You
Yeah?
know, because yes, it's very yeah, I think so, because it's great for that, seeing an Asian story, play on screen, but I think it's quite universal. I've had a lot of friends who aren't Asian who went to see it and they really enjoyed it too. The cringe was real for them. They remember that kind of coming of age. It was such a trip down memory lane that I think it just captured all of it, from cringe to tenderness to sort of introspection, and that family kind of dynamic. It's so beautifully done that, I think it's one of my favorite now. One of
Yeah.
my favorite movies.
Yeah, there's been so many incredible films with an all Asian cast, or a majority of it being an Asian cast for over the last few years, whether that is Minari, Crazy Rich Asians, The Farewell, Past Lives.
Joyride.
Yeah, Joyride. I think this one I feel like is maybe my favorite because it's
Mhm.
so relatable to my
Yeah.
upbringing and like
Right.
my family life as well. So it really hits home, and just like covering all like the digital stuff, MySpace and Facebook,
Yeah.
and really capturing that almost in like a time capsule sort of way. It was so
Yes.
nostalgic, but very real at the same time. Like I didn't feel like I was exactly back in 2008 in a way. I don't know how to describe it. I'm articulating this
Yeah.
in a great way, but maybe you all know what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
No, I think I've read an article, like, where Sean Wang was being interviewed, and I think he said he didn't want to sugarcoat that kind of era. There were some slurs that were used which would be, inappropriate then, but I think a lot more people are aware about it now. And he said he didn't want to cover that up because he wanted to show exactly how it was, the good, bad, and ugly, which I think really came through.
Yeah.
It really hit the spot, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. Like the relatability, because I mean, Crazy Rich Asians is great, but we can't really relate to a lot of the characters in that. Or Joyride was so funny, but so extreme. Like we're not really living that life. But this one, I think we've all lived a little bit of this film in one way or another. Yes. Oh man, so much to talk about with this film. Definitely, everyone needs to go see it for sure. It should be nationwide. Is it international too, Zoe? You guys got it in your theaters over there?
Yeah, we've got it in the UK as well. I'm hoping to see it again, actually, probably next week because it's not out in Manchester properly. It's
Okay.
out in the rest of the UK, but it's only in very limited cinemas. So I'm hoping to see it again.
Okay, yeah. Everyone out there, go see it if you can. Who knows how long it's going to be in theaters? It's not a huge film, but it's super fun.
It's so good.
I hope it streams eventually. I hope it streams on one of the streamers eventually, so everyone can get some eyeballs on it. But you don't know, so go see it in the theater while you have a chance, because some of these smaller films, you just don't get to see them after a certain amount of time. So yeah, and Sean, if you're listening, come on the podcast. Come on, well, defend yourself. Talk about your film a little bit. We'll get him one of these days, right, Katie? We'll...
I think so. Maybe his next feature film, which I
Okay.
already
Ooh.
starting work on that, is what I hear.
Oh wow, yeah, because he said he's been working on this for 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
so you can't just stop. You have to constantly be. But now he's got some cachet. I think he's got some interest, so he's probably going to be greenlit a little more than he used to. So. Yeah, so that's cool.
Hopefully.
All right, so everyone out there, go see the film. Thanks to you guys for coming in and talking with us. It's always fun talking with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for
It's been
having
really
in.
fun. Thanks so much.
Zoe, it was so nice to meet you.
Yes, it was. I hope we get to chat again.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, when you come out to the Bay Area, Zoe. Oh, actually, then we'll
I
fly
definitely
Katie
need to.
into.
I'll come up. I need to come up. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a
That would
brother.
be really fun.
You got a brother here. So, all right, or we can go to Manchester. That'd be
Yeah,
fun
I've
too.
never been to Europe.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, you should come.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Definitely.
I would love to. Yeah. All right. See, we got anything to promote? We're gonna talk about. Katie, you got anything you want to promote right now?
Just my socials. You can follow me on TikTok or Instagram at Katie Yao Yao. That's all.
All right. Follow Katie Yao Yao, and Zoe at Juniper Sea Books.
Yeah.
And website is juniperbythesea.com. Well, what dates will you be in Bristol and London?
Bristol, 22nd of September, and in London on the 28th.
Okay.
Both Saturdays.
All right. Go grab a book. Go say hi to Zoe. If you tell her that you heard her on the Infatuasian podcast, you'll throw in a bookmark or a sticker. What do we got, Zoe?
Special discount.
Okay, special discount for Infatuasian listeners. I think we have a few. We have a few in England, so that'll be fun. All right, and as I always mention, you can write to us at infatuasianpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Infatuasian Podcast. We'll put all these handles in our show notes. And so everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. On behalf of Katie, Zoe, and myself, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and safe out there. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone.